Dallas to Connecting the Journey. We've got another great guest on the show, and as you remember, Connecting the Journey, the thesis of the show is as entrepreneurs, we're always looking forward. We're always looking to the next greatest thing, what's next, and very seldom do we look back with intention and see where we came from. And for me, I think that's truly where we find gratitude, looking back where we came from so we can move forward with a heart full of appreciation and gratitude. Today, I'm really excited to spend some time with Gabe Magick Bernstein. He was an EO member from 2006. From 2000 to 2006. Funny in talking with him. He's was in form with one of my form mates, Phil Young. But very excited to have him here. He's now in Maui. Welcome to have you on the show, bright and early in Maui for you, Greg.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm really excited about being on the show. When I was in EEO, which was called YEO then, it was a real catalyst for me and my success, and it's been fun to reflect back on it in preparation for the show and think about it. And so I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, pleasure to have you. It's fun for me to do this show because I really enjoy looking back and learning from people and learning about their journeys. But you know what we're trying to do here with this show and is get re in touch with the alumni and reach out to them and then just get them back into our community. It's 30 years that EO Dallas has been around. And so it's been a real joy for me to spend some time with some older EO Dallas members and really catch up with them, see what they're doing now, and then look back at some of their fun times and experiences and how really EO impacted them in their journey. So let's jump in. I am going to get back. We're going to touch later on the show how your name changed from Gabe Bernstein to Gabe Magick Bernstein. You go by Magick. So I'm going to call you Magick on the show if that's cool.
That sounds great. Yeah, I'd be glad to share about it. It's pretty interesting.
All right, awesome. Well, Magick, tell me about some of your first memories in EO. Like, how did you who told you about EO? What did you first think when people, presented EO to you? What was your first instinct? What was your thinking about?
I had a friend way back. I'm pretty sure it started when I was in grad school. His name was Randy Stagen, and we were friends. And then he was involved in a company that was just down the street from me. And I remember one day we were about to separate after hanging out, and I said, "What's your purpose in life? What are you here for? What are you doing?" And he looked at me and he said, "I'm here to raise the consciousness of the planet." And he said it with such like enthusiasm and passion. And when he said that, I knew it was my mission too. And he became Rand, and he ended up joining YEO. He went on to be YEO president and a very pivotal member of the chapter. And I saw him get into YEO, and he told me about it. And I could just feel the energy of the organization. I could feel how helpful it would be to be in there, even though I didn't fully understand what it was yet. And I was really drawn to get in there. But at the time that I learned about it, I didn't qualify yet. So it actually was part of the motivation of, there was many motivations for being successful. It was one of them. It was like, I want to be in that organization. So that was the beginning and how I first saw it. And then the first meeting that I went to was a beautiful learning event at the Mansion Hotel. And I remember being impacted by the speaker, impacted by the group. And I actually met a woman that night who became my girlfriend for years. And it was actually I'd say the first relationship that I had that was really healthy in just about every way and peaceful and just amazing. And it kind of showed me what the new bar should be around intimate, romantic partnership, as well as the new bar should be around, people I want to hang around and sort of energies that I want to plug into. And I can tell you more about this plugging into the energy of the field of EO later, because that was one of the powerful benefits I received from it.
Yeah, Rand's a friend of EO, and he's went on to create Stagen. And it's funny that you asked him that question. That's really what Stagen is about, amongst a lot of other things, but it's about finding your purpose in life. And I'll tell you, that's one thing that I'm not I don't want to say envious of, but I really enjoy being around people. They know what their purpose is, right? What their guiding light is, and that's what they're going through. But Rand's a friend of EO, and it's been awesome to see what he's done with Stegan and how many lives he's impacted. And, you know, you talk about the energy of EO, right? And that's probably one of the most, you know, powerful things that I see and feel about EO is that you just have a different connection with when people are in EO and they've been around the program. They've been around, I call it being around my people, right? When you're around your people, that energy is powerful. You know, we talked, the first time we talked, we hit it off in 2 minutes because that it's like the BS is gone, right? Yeah. You know you're around your people, you know you can share, you know you can be vulnerable, and that's really how the connections start. And you eliminate all the BS. You can just get down to it. And you can ask people like, what's your purpose, right? And what's important to you in life? What are you struggling with? And it just opens up everybody's heart.
Yeah, and I think that for me, one of the key components to EO was and is that there's a rule that you don't sell people on your business. Like it's a peer-to-peer support group, not a networking group. Like, so that's where that ability to be vulnerable comes in, because you're not looking for this person to be your client ever. This is someone that you connect with on a mutuality level that you just don't get out there in the world so much. But what was more powerful for me was that I think there was 195 members in the Dallas chapter when I was on the board at one point. And so I was tapping into a field of energy of people who are highly motivated, mostly highly successful and similar, and have goals of being, good and great and outstanding at what they're doing. And I could feel almost like I had a plug that I could literally plug into that would juice me up. When I would come out of my forum meetings or an EO learning event, man, I was like a rocket ship with motivation and inspiration and, creativity. And it really did help propel me into more levels of success, just plugging into that energy. It was like fuel.
Yeah, and that's so true, man. I mean, I think I've been in EO for 12 years now, and I've kind of been, a little bit out of the mix for a couple of years, and just, it doesn't matter if you've been gone, if you've been out of the mix, you come back, and that's a great analogy. It's like a plug, you just get the energy from everybody around you. And I'm sure we've all had forum days that we're like, there's all the kind of stuff going on, and maybe I don't really want to go to forum, but I've never, ever left a forum meeting not being so grateful for my group, and like you said, full of energy and full of creativity. And that's a great analogy, man. It's like, I like to call it being around my people, but I may borrow that to plug it into my people.
And it's also, each member's contributing, like they're sending through that plug too. And I had the privilege of, while I was on the board and afterwards, kind of being the fixer. So when there was a forum that was in trouble, because I do transformational work, I would go in and I would quickly identify why they were in trouble and then share, this is what you might need to do if you guys want to come back to being a great forum again. Some of them have been great forums. In fact, I had to do it with my own forum. My own forum was about to go down, and they made me, I think they called it a forum leader. Is that the
moderator?
The moderator.
Yeah.
They made me the moderator that year, and I helped flip it back to health and vitality. So there's also great opportunities to practice leadership, to help your fellow EOers and contribute in powerful ways. And I love that part too. So it was a give and a take, and an extraordinary one that I really, really enjoyed. And just a quick side note, that the thing that I found the most that would cause forums to have problems was the lack of gestalt. And particularly in mature forums where people were now really close and tight friends, the gestalt had faded away. And as soon as I brought back, like, okay, we're doing 100% gestalt again, the forum would start recovering. Now, I mean, there were some other things too, but that was the main thing.
It's a great point, because we're in a mature forum, and we're probably a little bit lax than most, right? But it's a great point, because no matter how, some people say, look, I want you to tell me how it is. I want you to, just give it to me. It affects the whole room, right? Because having non-gestalt just shuts people down naturally. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it, right? I mean, it just naturally kind of shuts you down, because You're supposed to be in this safe space where you can share anything. And even if there's an ounce of like, ooh, somebody's judging me, or ooh, there's this or that, like it just eliminated. So, the fundamentals that Forum was created on, there's a reason why that works. And Gestalt's a major factor in that.
And I'll say that one of the most pivotal moments for me in EO that changed my life came in a non-Gestalt moment, but it was after the meeting. So the meeting concluded. I've been wanting to sell my business for years. I'd actually been guided, like higher self, intuition to sell it, but I didn't really want to because it was a cash cow. And I can tell you that's another pivotal moment of how I wasn't listening to that and something really, really challenging happened. But
let's jump into it. I was going to ask you about pivotal moments. So let's jump into it.
These are two of them that are kind of combined here. So I had, if you read most successful business leaders, scientists, almost anybody will tell you intuition is an incredible, important part of how they've been successful. They don't know how they do it. They don't know what it is, but they know it's really vital, from Steve Jobs to Einstein, all over. And I had this strong intuition that I needed to sell, and it was a cash cow. And I was questioned by my friends, like, why would you do that? And one day, and I also really kind of knew that I should fire somebody, but I couldn't bring myself to do it because he was such a nice guy. Well, one day, the president of a very large company that was one of our pivotal vendors that we couldn't really do business without came into my office and said, "You're fired, and we're never going to do business with you again because your employee." Call him John, did something that upset us. And so that's it, we're done. And that should have been the end of my business. It really should have.
Did you know you should have fired John before that?
Yep. Oh yeah. When that happened, I was kicking myself like, man, I should have fired John. And I had presented about John in my forum, and I had known it, and I just couldn't do it. He was just a nice guy, and I was running a charity operation when it came to John. I'm sure many of us have done that, but it almost cost me the whole business. And I sat with it, and I got the message that if you look at the big picture of the universe and all of its inner workings, that if I wasn't going to follow my intuition, the universe was going to force me to follow it. Like the universe wanted me out of that business so I could move on to actually do my life purpose in a more direct way. And if I wasn't going to do it the way that I wanted to do it, the universe was going to make me do it. And it was going to end that business. So I kind of made a deal with God that day, with my higher self, with the deeper me, you could say, like, okay, I will sell if you'll help me save the business. And I did a presentation with my forum about it, and I got, their Gestalt feedback that helped me believe in myself and trust myself and know that I could do it. And that was a powerful moment. And then another thing happened after there was a couple meetings I talked to my forum about this because it was a big problem. And after one of those meetings, one of my forum mates turned to me and he said, "You know what, Greg," at the time, "you're full of shit." And I said, "What?" And he said, "You've been talking about selling your business for years, and I haven't seen you do anything about it. You're basically full of shit. You're talking one thing and you're not doing it." And then he got up and he left. And he wasn't being a dick. He was trying to help. And he did help because I realized he was right. Like, I was incongruent. I was saying one thing and doing another. So
that's a really powerful thing, because I don't know if this is in most forum, and this should be a forum confidential, but everybody kind of has their thing that they're working on in forum, right? The thing that they present more than once on, right? And they're working through it, they're figuring it out. But in a Gestalt setting, it's hard to call bullshit, right? Yeah. And if you're in a true forum that you're sharing the 5% and you want people to hold you accountable, you need somebody to call it's either calling your bullshit or just giving you a swift kick in the ass, right? And say, look, you've been talking about it long enough. Your gut knows what you need to do. Your intuition knows what you need to do. So get on with it and do it, you know? And that's what that guy did for you.
Yeah, I got chicken skin, like goosebumps as you're sharing that, because, it's technically not part of the organizational structure of a forum, but creating time for that, maybe outside the forum or maybe afterwards, or in some way with this energy, this group, these people, was powerful. It's all bringing a tear to my eye. It changed my life, because I meditated. I got a plan of how to rebuild a relationship with this vendor. My employees didn't like that plan, but they trusted me.
Yeah.
And it did. It was somehow we didn't lose any business that year. We didn't break even, but we were flat in our growth, which is the first year we were ever flat. We were always flying. But being flat was like a miracle.
Yeah.
And then we just went on to like double and just keep cruising after that. Then we became their favorite client, actually. And I went on to honor the agreement that I made with myself, and that was sparked by him that day, and I sold the company, and it was the best thing I ever did, because then I could go on to, that was an important part of my life purpose, was having that company.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that it wasn't, it's just that it was supposed to be a stepping stone, and I wasn't stepping off that stone.
Yeah, you were on it too long. How long before the guy called bullshit on you and you sold the business?
The guy called bullshit, and I set an intention to sell it. It might have been by the end of the year. It was probably, it took me about a year I had to rebuild that relationship, because I couldn't sell without that in place.
Right.
And then I had to actually get some revenue growth from there. So from the moment that went down, it could have been a year and a half or two, but not that it would have happened sooner if it wasn't for, there was an obstacle. I mean, it was happening.
And it could have happened longer if he wouldn't have called you out on it.
Oh, I feel sure it would have been longer. Those two events were key.
Well, I want to get to kind of the next phase and what you did after that, but let's talk about EO a little bit outside of forum. Like, what was some of your favorite memories when you were in EO? We talked about the camaraderie, the energy, but like, what are some of your favorite memories looking back?
Well, I think for me, my favorite memories were really just being with the people. I mean, we went on chapter retreats. I think they call them chapter retreats.
Yep.
And just hanging out and doing fun things together. My forum retreat, once we went to Costa Rica and we went river rafting down the Pequari River. It was just so much fun to be in these experiences with, like you said, my people. So, there are specific moments, and some of them are more social moments. So I don't know that they're, all that important to share here, but really, every learning event, I felt like I came away with something I learned and was inspired by, and I met new and different people, and then deepening with the people that I'd already met. I know I'm kind of speaking generally here, but I don't know that there was a specific thing that occurred. It was more just like every time I had an interaction, I loved it. And like you said, even when I kind of wasn't motivated to go to forum and I had a lot to do, and it was like, I could blow this off, I always walked away going, oh man, I'm glad I went.
Yeah, I think it's we all know it's the most important, I guess, thing in EO, and being in a good forum and being in, your board of directors, your people that you can love and trust I'm super grateful for it. And I think it's probably one of the most impactful things that EO has to offer. So, what about your next
board? Is that what you're saying? Being on the board?
No, forum. But then I think and also be on the board too. I got on the board pretty quickly, and was in charge of the accelerator program for a couple of years. And the board trips and the leading on the board and being able to, my first deal was in Panama. We'd had a GLC in Panama, and I didn't really know what this thing was about. I just jumped in with 2 feet, and we're sitting in the Panama Canal, and a big ship rolls by with the EO flag on it, and the Panamanian president's hanging out with us. I'm like, okay, this might be a big deal, and those oil moments, those once in a lifetime moments that you think about, it's filled with them, because I think EO is about living your life to the fullest. And if we're going to do something, then let's do it right, and let's make sure it's unique.
Yeah, for sure. And I think being on the board for me, I've been an entrepreneur. And so as an entrepreneur, normally I'm the boss. I decide what happens, I mean, of course I include my employees and things, but it was fun to be on the board and be in a group of peers and steering an organization together and learning how to do that together. And then, yeah, like GLC in Washington, DC, and we're going to the Capitol and these places, and doors are flying open for us, and it's just fun to experience some of that.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your name change. I'm thinking that I'm assuming that leads into your next kind of phase of the journey. So what happened when, you followed your intuition and followed your higher self and sold the business? What was the next phase in your journey like?
Yeah, so the whole time that I lived in Dallas and was in EO, I had I call it a dual life. It wasn't really a dual life, but I was pursuing learning about advanced psychological, transformational, and spiritual meditations and techniques, and was teaching in a meditation center and teaching in a transformational center and leading retreats to Hawaii to study with kahuna, who are like shaman or sorcerers out there. And so these were highly transformational experiences that are kind of like what people go and do ayahuasca for today. And at the last couple of years of my time at EO, I was going into companies and doing transformational experiences for companies. Sometimes EOers were hiring me to go into their companies. I was facilitating EO forum retreats. They would fly me out to wherever they were doing their retreat, and I would facilitate something for them. And so when I sold the business, I was guided again intuitively to move to Hawaii. And that's what I started doing. I promised myself I would take a year off to reset the system and not just like a hamster on a wheel or inertia, start doing the same thing again. Build another advertising business or whatever. Like I wanted to make sure that I got off of that inertia train. And so I went into leading transformational retreats and doing transformational coaching. And I do retreats in Hawaii and Mount Shasta and Sedona and sort of power places around the world. And I go into companies and I help them have more intuition and be more connected with themselves to make better decisions and maybe increase camaraderie or whatever the CEO wants me to come in for. And the retreats that I do, sometimes people have, like I said, ayahuasca type experiences, but without any substances. So like going back to what Rand and I talked about when we were 2 years old or something, raise the consciousness of the planet, help people bring more of their abilities online that might not be there yet because of conditioning and culture and what we've been taught is real and not real. And so that's kind of what I'm up to today, and I love it.
Where'd that come from? Like, where'd that start? Where was your first time you got in tune with your higher self? Like, where'd that start for you?
It's a really good question, Gabe, and I never quite know where to answer it because like I have a memory in first grade of realizing what karma is and even the word. But I wouldn't say I was a spiritual person then or connected with my higher self or anything. So there's little experiences like that. When I was in sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, I discovered that my brother and I were talking to each other without words. You might call it telepathy, but I think that word's loaded. But there was ways that we would know what each other were thinking. Sometimes like a random thought that, you couldn't logically say where that might have come from. But I think where it really started for me on a conscious level is when I got to college and I met a friend who was very, very spiritual and had a spiritual family. And we started having these discussions about spirituality, and I started reading books and studying the world's religions and trying to figure out, well, how can there be all these different religions and they all think they're right? Like there must be something that's at the core of all of this that's real. And then humans come in with their dogma and they're trying to teach it to many, many different people. and in order to do that, you have to create like tenets and rules and dogma and stuff. Because the world's relative. So, spirituality is hard to compress into language or words. Those are separation. And at the core of spirituality, there's oneness. There's this like vastness, this infiniteness that can't be compressed into words or language. So every time humans are trying to teach it to others and tell others about it, in a sense, it's impossible, and it tends to get changed.
So you
So
think that that religion exists to explain spirituality?
I mean,
Or
look,
they were created, and it was created to try to explain it? Because it makes sense when you say that if someone has a spiritual experience, it is very hard to explain.
right. So like somebody, even like a prophet or a great person, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, they're these incredible beings who are probably closer to God or whatever that is for you, spirit, than any of us. And then, okay, so how do they convey that to others so that others can then experience those things? That's a really difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
And you have to use words, and words are going to muddle and change the experience. And then every human is different.
Mm-hmm.
So if you really are a great teacher, from my perspective, for me, when I'm talking to one person, it's different than what I'd say to a different person. And one group, it's different than what I'd say to a different group. It could even be opposites, because we live in a paradoxical universe. Mm-hmm. And medicine for one person can be the opposite for them even the next day. Like as we learn and evolve, some things that we thought were true and really were at one level of our existence are not true at another level. And so it's really hard to try to put all this into some kind of like structure that you could teach, and it's right for everybody. So I think that's why religion tends to get less useful the larger it gets and more complicated it gets.
Yeah, everybody interprets it differently. If you look at the Bible or something like that, everyone is unique. They're going to interpret that the way that they want to interpret, the way that it hits them, Mm-hmm. And so that was I know it's very, very kind of simple, but if you look at that, like religion has evolved to try to explain spirituality. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, and anybody who wrote the Bible or the Quran or the Upanishads or whatever it is, a person wrote that, mm-hmm. and they may be trying to relay reality, but it's their own filters and perceptions and experiences that are coloring what they're writing. So we're never actually getting the full unadulterated truth. It's not their fault. Any human, there's no human in the world that can write something down and not have it go through their own system.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then there's translations and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, and it goes two ways. I mean, we were on a vacation a couple weeks ago. I was walking down the beach, and there was just all these rocks, and all the rocks are completely different, right? I mean, not one rock the same. And I was like, you know what? Sometimes I have trouble communicating, right? And people don't think like me. People don't think like you. And the opposite of that is that when I'm listening to somebody or I'm trying to understand somebody, I'm not thinking like them. And that's a very difficult thing to do, to try to relate someone, because we're all unique. We all think differently. And I think that's relating that back to EO, it's really cool because you may think differently, you may communicate differently, but the value system is what's able to put us together, and everybody kind of having, kind of one goal, and just this sense of community, but it's very difficult if you think about that. Like, we're all unique. We all know that, right? But then when you go, well, people don't think like me, and I don't think like someone else, but somehow we're supposed to communicate and work together. It's difficult.
Well, yeah. I mean, just, I do a podcast myself, and the subject of my next podcast is meditation. And the thing is, if I lined up 100 people right now and asked them what is meditation, I would get 100 answers.
Yep.
And they would be quite varied, right? So we think we're talking about the same things often, and we're not. I had a guy come on a couple of my retreats, and he said, at the end of one of them, he said, Magick, I thought you were kind of stupid at first. And now I realize it's the opposite. and I'm like, well, why'd you think I was stupid? And he said, well, you ask a lot of questions that the answers seem really obvious to me.
Mhm.
But I noticed over time that when you ask these questions of people, the answers they give 99% of the time is different than the answer I thought they were going to give.
Mm.
Right. So we're projecting what we think people are thinking onto them. But when you stop and ask people, you realize, oh, they have a lot of meaning going on in there that's very different than what I would have thought they meant. And I think back to EO, that one of the things that I love about EO is actually that we are all different and we all think different. And that was so valuable to me to actually, hear and experience how different you are or somebody else is. And that added value to me because
Yeah.
now I get the benefit of how you think. And I go, oh, that's a really interesting way of seeing it. Let me try that on. And it becomes a part of my abilities as I go forward. And I start getting this broader and broader and broader way of seeing things and experiencing things that is so invaluable. And I can give you an example from EO.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I, um, I mean, I guess it's just something I learned from somebody, but it's really a way this guy saw the world. He just saw no limitations. He never saw limitations. He just saw himself as the most successful person in the space, and he saw himself like in the future, uh, as if it was now.
Hmm.
And so he was on the cover of every magazine and on the news, and like he was everywhere all the time. And I asked him one day, like, dude, like one time he had actually ended a business and was just at the beginning of starting one, and he was everywhere. And I was like, how are you doing that? And he's like, oh, well, I just figure that people who write news stories are looking for news and they probably, you know, don't have enough of it and they probably looking for it. So I just start calling them and telling them I got a story for you. And they're like, great. And so I adopted that and I started seeing the world differently from what I learned from him. And I ended up on the cover of a bunch of different magazines easily and quickly because he was right. And
Yeah.
it kind of changed how I saw a lot of things. I was like, oh, people act, it's not me calling and like bugging them and trying to get them to write a story about me. I'm actually helping them
Yeah.
by bringing what I'm up to, and it translated into a lot of different things in my life.
Mm. Yeah. I'm sitting in Jeff Crilly's studio. He's an EO member, and that's the kind of the core of his business. He's created a newsletter that goes out every morning, and he serves up stories to thousands and thousands of reporters across the country, and it's wildly successful.
Right.
Because you're giving them their job on a silver platter, right? And it's vetted, and yeah, they'll take it. Who wouldn't take the easy button, you
Yeah.
know?
Like, oh, I don't have to go find a story. I got one right here.
Yeah,
Great.
exactly. Well, tell me how Magick came to be, how Greg is no longer, and now you are Magick Bernstein.
Yeah, that happened once I moved to Hawaii and I was doing this work. I had been, training with these, I've had the privilege. It's been amazing, and I'm not sure how this happened, but I've had the amazing blessing to have people that you would see like Dumbledores from Harry Potter, multiple Dumbledores, like probably five of them take me under their wings starting when I was probably 25, 26 years old and apprentice me and start grooming me to take over Hogwarts,
Mm.
And so when I moved to Hawaii, then I was closer to one of them and got to hang out with him more. He's a kahuna, they call it in Hawaii, and he actually lives in the jungle and he has no possessions. Talk about the opposite of EO. This guy has no possessions. He lives on the ground in the jungle in a powerful vortex sacred site. He's got tattoos over his whole body. If he walked into the room, everybody would stop and stare because there's just energy. Watches start spinning. And he actually says he's from 500 years in the future and he came back here to help, steer the planet. Who
Wow.
knows whether that's true or not, but he's a very powerful man and can do a lot of radical things that you would see in one of those movies. And so a man that is one of those types, he doesn't rise to that level, but he's one of those types, and he's an elder and another elder on one of the Hawaiian Islands asked me to go out with them for the day, and they were going to show me some power spots. And we went to this cave on the top of a mountain that overlooks a lot of Kauai, and they say it's where Kauai is actually breathing. And we meditated in that cave, and it's a very powerful meditation for me. I can't say something specific happened other than I was just like in the void. And on the way down, I had a shaman friend with me, and she said, Greg, while we were meditating in that cave, I got a specific download that's for you. Do you want me to give it to you? And I said, sure, tell me whatever you received, and she said, well, your name is Magick, and it's spelled differently. It's Magick. And that's because the first spelling, the normal spelling, is somebody that creates trickery. Through trickery, they make you think that something miraculous and mystical is real, but it's not. But Magick, Magick, is somebody that actually shows people that the mystical and the miraculous are real and illuminates that for people. And it really fit. I was surprised. I would have never, ever, ever told you I would ever change my name. But when she said it to me, it was instantaneous, like, oh, that's my name. I never thought about it. I never analyzed it. I never wondered how it would be. And it's definitely triggering or activating for some people. And it just doesn't seem to matter to me. It never has. I've had the name now for almost 20 years, and it just feels like my name, which is kind of cool. And, of course, the side bonus of it is that it's often a conversation starter, and people are curious about it, and that's fun. People remember it. But I'm surprised still to this day, growing up in Dallas, that I would take on any name other than, the one my parents gave me, more or less one that's kind of out there like that. But that's how it happened. And it's felt just 100% congruent and 100% me the whole time.
That's awesome.
It was funny though. I'll tell you, I share one thing about EO. When I moved to Hawaii, and I put up this website that was like shamanic and, have ayahuasca type experiences without them. And, we're going to walk through walls and shapeshift and all this stuff that's pretty crazy for EO folks. And my name is Magick now. Man, did I get a hard time from my forums.
I bet you did.
And the EO folks. Because back then, I would say there was maybe one or two people in the entire EO chapter that would be interested in having a conversation with me about this kind of stuff. And today, it might be a third. It might even be half. You and I, when we talked, you were like, oh man, I'm really interested. This is really interesting. And you told me some of your own stories. And I love that because the consciousness of the planet is rising.
Yeah.
People are getting more aware, more conscious, and realizing that there's actually more to us than we understand. And we can't explain, but there's more to life than what we can see, hear, feel, taste, and smell with our five senses. And I love it, in big companies out in Silicon Valley now, in order to work at the company, sometimes you have to have done ayahuasca. You have to have gone to Burning Man. Like they want, you have to have read certain books about consciousness. So it's a new world. It's really great.
Yeah, it's definitely changing. I think there's just so many things that happen in our lives that cannot be explained. And if you look back at, entrepreneur journeys and things like that, we talked about looking back and those God wink moments or whatever you want to call them. There's so many of those things throughout our lives that just can't be explained. And I think we're seeing more of that. People are becoming more aware of it. I think the, introduction of psychedelics becoming more mainstream is affecting that.
Yeah.
We talked about that and how that affects your transformation, that it just heightens it sometimes a little bit too much. But I think we've lost, 30, 40 years of research on those things. And I think it's just coming back more mainstream. And it's great that you're able to provide these types of experiences for people because they're interested, they're curious, they don't know where to turn to. And I think it's becoming a major part of our society today, is just looking to see what's more and how we can, get in touch with our inner self.
Yeah, more and more people that I would have never guessed would be interested in what's my real purpose, what am I here for, and how do I transform and improve? Like even just, how do I build my business bigger? Any goal or intention that we have, what I've discovered for the last 30 years is it's an inside job. I mean, yes, there are things I need to do externally. I need to hire the right people. I need to make the right decisions. But when I say an inside job, I mean, we have belief systems, we have fears, doubts, insecurities, value conflicts that when we go inside and learn how to identify those and shift those, then the outside shifts.
Yep.
And that's the thing, when I was an EO and my business was, actually, this is what got me into EO. Was my business was like basically kind of not doing all that great. It was okay. Maybe I did 300 something $1,000 a year in my business total gross. And I was an ad agency, so not much of that was actually mine.
Sure.
But one day I went out to one of these sacred sites that I lead retreats in Hawaii. And this sort of magical, mystical, unexplainable thing opened up. And I realized that there was this kind of fear of failure that had been preventing me from being successful. Every month I had a close deal where I'd almost sell $1 million client, and every deal, every month it would fall through for like 4 or 5 years. Until this moment, in this powerful spot, I realized, and I've been basically trying to change. I knew I had this fear. I'd done every psychological technique on it I can imagine. But in this moment, there was something magical that opened like a hole in the universe, and I was able to release this fear, and I knew it was gone forever. And then also, then I had an epiphany. Oh my God, I'm afraid of success. If I had $1 million client, do I have the right personnel? Do I have the right expertise? Can I execute? All these fears that were in there that were in my unconscious that I didn't even know about. And something magical happened that day, and I could just release that. My intention for being on that retreat was I wanted $1 million client. And I've been trying that for 4 or 5 years. But in that moment, I knew it was going to happen. And I got back to Dallas. Within 6 weeks, my fax machine, because that's how we did it back then, was cruising with like a phone book of contracts from one client for $962,000. It wasn't the million, but it was close enough.
Yeah.
And I never didn't have at least $1 million client from that point forward. So miraculous things happen that are unexplainable. How? Regularly in my work as a coach and on retreats, I have people, and these are just sort of easy things to see. I've had somebody on hospice with a deformed heart go back, and it's perfectly normal. Last year, we had someone with a melanoma, went back, no melanoma. I've had someone with brain cancer who had aphasia, so they couldn't even speak or understand language. A half an hour to 40 minutes with me, and they started speaking perfect English. I had somebody come in a wheelchair a few months ago, walking around, perfect health now. There are miracles, and I don't even understand them, but I know how to create a space that will happen, and I know how to help people let go of the beliefs and the doubts and the fears and the invisible prisons that we're living in, so they can have more possibility.
And I think tying this back to the EO community, there's so much of that involved in business and people starting their own business and feeling alone and the fear and the imposter syndrome and all that stuff. It's just so prevalent. I think in today's society, it's even worse, right? Because you're grabbing your phone, you're seeing all these people that are successful, right? And it's really bad. And I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, listen, it doesn't matter what you tell yourself, you're right. Right?
That's right.
No matter whatever you tell yourself, you're right. So you might as well make it something positive and something awesome. But that fear is it's so bad, man. And then what's on the other side of it? Nothing. Freedom is on the other side of fear. It's just how do you break through that? How do you get through to the other side and leave that fear behind you is a challenging thing.
And I've been helping EOers and lots of other people do exactly that for 30 years. I mean, before EO even, it's like, and that's why I would go in and they'd have me come into their EO. I'd come and run a retreat for a forum because I would help people break through and heal and shift all of that. When I did one EO retreat, I think every person that was on that retreat got what their intention was. Like we set goals on the retreat and they all got them because I helped them move through all that. Today, actually, my approach is pretty radical for most people, because instead of trying to get rid of the fear, my approach is to actually embrace it and love it fully, because it's just coming from some kind of unresolved material inside of us from our childhood or from somewhere inside of us. And it's just a part of us that wants to integrate with us. Usually, actually, underneath the fear is some great superpower that we have. Like an example is, a little kid who has a superpower of being like incredibly curious, right? Curiosity solves problems. But as a child, he gets, lambasted for it, and teachers say shut up and you're asking too many questions, and he asks a stupid question and people laugh at him. So now he's got this protective layer of fear and pain over his superpower. And so if I can help that person to learn how to love the fear and love the pain, it will empty, it will metabolize, and then the superpower will come back online. And I see it all the time. It's incredible. I help people go to the next level in whatever they're doing over and over again by this simple process that's the opposite of what most people are being taught, which is you need to get rid of the fear.
And fear, and not embrace it, love it, not face it, but love it is what you're saying,
actually,
right?
love it. Yeah. But when I say love, and this is for another day, another time, I'm talking about unconditional love. Conditional love, where you like it. You don't have to like it. You don't have to want it to be there. It's not like that. It's just like, it is you right now. Like whatever's happening in your psyche is you. And to be happy, if we love ourselves fully, that's what brings us happiness. And love, unconditional love, actually heals anything that's false and illusory. And those fears are false. They're illusory. And so they start to heal, and they bring us the wisdom. Like any experience we had as a child that hurt us, there's some wisdom in it.
Sure.
But if we don't love it, we might not get that wisdom. We might actually get fear instead, or just pain. So there's wisdom that comes out of loving our fears and loving our pain. And it is the panacea that heals anything and brings us back into wholeness and into happiness and peace. And we're not run by that stuff anymore. It's kind of hard to compress. I know we only have a little bit of time, but we want to stay focused on EO, but it's powerful. It's a powerful thing.
And I think look, we talked about your EO journey and where it's taking you today, but I mean, what you're doing today, I think would have a big impact on anyone in life, but particularly folks in EO, because we have another level of fear and uncertainty and imposter syndrome and all this, and we're trying to live in our unique ability and uncover our superpower, but there's this layer of I don't know what you call it, fear, junk, whatever, that's just in the way. And that's an interesting concept to say, instead of facing it, love it, right? It's part of you. It's part of you right now. And so, loving everything about yourself can help that diminish and go away and unleash your superpower.
And I think most people find that when they try to get rid of their fears or just put their mind on positive thoughts, those fears don't go away.
No,
they might be a little bit under the surface, but they don't go away, and they're running us. So loving them actually makes them go away, especially if you can love them not to make them go away, but just to be whole and complete.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that I do these days that change, like going back to EO. So I have a very powerful relationship with my intuition, which I call my inner guidance. And I was really developing it back when I was in EO. I had experiences where I took my closing rate from 10 to 15% to 85, 90%, because I honed my connection with my inner guidance so that I actually knew exactly how my inner guidance communicated with me very, very consciously. So I could spot it and differentiate it from the myriad of other thoughts and feelings that I have every day. And I refined it to the point where I knew what it was, and I knew when I followed it, it was absolutely right every time. And I turned down a $300,000 contract with a very qualified AAA credit client that had been around for 25 years because my intuition told me not to take that business. And I didn't even know why. Sometimes there's a lot of trust involved because I don't get I'm on a need to know basis with my intuition and inner guidance. That just tells me yeses and nos sometimes. And my salesperson was not happy about not taking that business because she lost, 10, 15, $20,000 on the deal. But turns out that person, that company went on to buy billboards from a billboard company directly instead of through me. And they did not pay their bills. And that company lost $250,000, would have put me out of business. And so like I have a whole weekend workshop I've taught about how to refine this relationship with our inner guidance. And then back to what we were just talking about, what gets in the way of us following it? It's fears, doubts. I'm going to hurt somebody. I'm going to do something stupid. I don't even know what this is telling me. It's not logical. There's all this stuff that goes on inside that can stop us. But the most powerful people have a deeper relationship with that part of themselves, and they just know it and trust it. And so I help people have that and realize what's in the way and heal that. And it's a big part of my success as an entrepreneur, and a lot of my friends too. To some degree or another, they have it, but to have a more refined relationship with it brings more success. Whatever level somebody's wanting to go to, this will take you there faster and easier.
Yeah, and to listen to it, and you mentioned faster and easier. If you listen to it, you shrink that time that it takes for you to make a decision, right? If you really listen to it and you're tuned into it. So, well, Magick, look, great spending some time with you. We're definitely going to have lots of conversations offline. I think that this was great to look back at your journey and how EO has impacted you, and really how to wrap it up and see how, what you're doing today can really help a lot of people, but particularly people that are running their own business and they feel like they're alone and they're struggling with all the fear and doubt and imposter syndrome and all the fun stuff we deal with. So thanks for spending some time with us. Have fun in Maui. It sounds like you've been there for 20 years. You're living in paradise, and maybe we'll connect and maybe have you come in, and we'll connect you with Gail, who handles all of our speakers, and maybe you come in and work with some folks here at EO Dallas.
That'd be great. Yeah, that's I've often thought, it'd be great to come back to EO Dallas and contribute with some of this stuff in some way or another. And I just never followed up on it because life's busy, right? But,
yeah, it is.
Yeah, it seems like that especially now, I think EO's ripe for some of the things that I could bring. So that could be great. I've really enjoyed being here. It's fun to think about my time at EO. I really miss EO. There's not a chapter here where I live on Maui, which is the only reason why I'm not in EO still, because I loved it and I would have never given it up. But this is a small place and it's not here. So it's like I feel like I'm plugging in, plugging in a little bit, being here with you. So it feels good.
Well, come back and visit us. Anytime you're welcome in any events we have, come back and visit us, and we're definitely going to keep the conversation going.
Sounds good. Thanks, Gabe.
Well, EO Dallas, thanks for spending some time with us again. This is a very impactful interview for me. I think that there's a lot of this fear and doubt that we deal with as entrepreneurs, and we know that there's something else there. There's too many God wink moments. There's so many things that happen in our lives that we just can't explain. And so think about that. Think about that as you look back on where you've came from and where you're going. You look back in appreciation of those things that happen along the way so you can move forward with a full heart of gratitude. Have a great day. Really enjoying spending some time with you guys. Alumni, tune in. Come join some of our events, and we're happy to have you back in the community. Talk soon.